Hello, I'm Bob Henkos. I have 33 years of experience as a CPA and did tax shelters and real estate tax partnerships back in the early 80s. And we're continuing the series today, and we're up to the point to the most important word you have ever heard come out of my mouth today or any other time when it comes to buying real estate. That is contingency. Contingency should become your most favorite word because this word, it has several meanings, but in real estate, it's important because you're making this offer contingent upon this happening. This allows you to control the entire process even after you've given in your offer. Okay? And here's the thing, and I said this, I believe, in the first session. Once you sign this contract, you're legally bound by it. There's really nothing you can do to get out of a contract once you've signed it. In fact, there's a specific legal jargon called specific performance, where someone can make you buy the house, even if you can't afford it, even if they can make you buy the house. Okay. A contingency allows you to demand that certain conditions are met before you're going to purchase the house that you have made an offer for. In other words, you have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to buy the house if this, and this. And it's very important that you know that you can do this. You see, I'll go back to those real estate agents that invaded my seminar, my presentation that one night. The reason they did that is because I stressed the word contingency. The fact that there was no standard agreements and everything is contingent upon you, the buyer. And it upset them because they came up with all these contingencies that I'm now going to discuss. Number one, the purchase is contingent upon a pest inspection and a correction of any problem discovered during the inspection. That's absolute number one. Why? Because there's, again, in some parts of the country, there's always termites. There's always some kind of pest. There was one client that had wood-boring ants. Okay? So that's the number one contingency. Okay? In fact, you could actually take these contingencies and just list them on your purchase order. The next one, it's contingent upon a building inspection by an expert of your choice, and of course you have to pay for them because they're doing your service, within a reasonable period of time. And there actually are people that will do this, where you actually hire somebody to come in. The prices will probably vary depending on the area you're in, so look into that and get a feel for how much it's going to cost, but you want to have that. The one that I had recently, when I called the person, they came and they inspected the house, and it was really wonderful in that they gave me a book. It was like a binder, and in the binder it listed everything that was wrong with the house, the approximate date of purchase, the approximate date that it was going to explode and break. And so it gave my wife and I tremendous knowledge to be able to plan to replace the roof, replace the furnace, replace the hot water heater. And that really tremendously helps because if you can budget for it, it's not as bad as if it just breaks and all of a sudden you're scrambling. So some inspectors are very good. Some other ones are not very good. Okay? So that's something else you have to check out. By the way, who should you talk to? Family and friends. Get a feel for if they've had anybody. Okay, then the next one, and these are all so important. The next one is to purchase. The purchase is contingent upon being able to obtain financing within certain ranges of interest rates, that's the market, within a reasonable period of time. In other words, you say, okay, we're going to buy this house, but only if we can get a mortgage at 3.5%. By the way, remember, when you make the offer, all these contingencies, the seller is going to cross off some of them and say, no, I don't want these. And they will give you another offer sheet that has less contingencies. Okay? Then you need to take your counter offer to their counter offer and add them back in. And this goes on until you agree with the seller to what's going to happen. By the way, do you see why real estate agents hate contingencies? Because it extends the process. And again, it's not that they're dishonest people. It's just that they don't care. They just want to sell the property. All right. But the being able to get financing is very important. You have to be able to work on that. And by the way, you can go be pre-approved for this. You can go get pre-approved at different banks and different agencies so that by the time you go in front of these people, you're already certain that you're going to get this interest rate, okay? But, and in fact, let me back up. Back in the 80s, when I was buying my first house, it's hard to imagine this, but the interest rates for housing, for a mortgage, was 13 to 15%. I purchased a $70,000 house, which was a nice house, by the way, in those days. A $70,000 house, all right? And when I looked at the closing statement and the truth in lending summary, I saw that I was going to pay, over a 30-year period, over $500,000 in cash for that house. So I want you to imagine this. I'm paying $70,000 for the house and $430,000 in interest. But again, the rate was at 13. I think I got the lowest in the neighborhood at 13.125%. The point is that you can go to the banks and you can, and the other problem was the rates went up were going up every day. Like I got 13.125, and they say they lock you in for 60 days, okay? Well, if you didn't get locked in, then what would happen is the rate could go to 14. Now, be aware that if you calculate a mortgage payment at 3.5% and you get 4.5%, you probably can't afford to live in the house. So that's why it's very important to have that contingency that you're limiting the interest rate that can be charged you. By the way, again, the seller might say, well, you're not going to get 3.5%. And then you say, oh, no, we're pre-approved. We will get 3.5%. We already talked to the bank. Again, have all your ducks in a row. It works out really well. Okay? Also, let's say you already own a house, then the sale would be contingent upon the sale of your house, obviously, because otherwise you have no down payment for the property. The last thing you want to have happen is for you not to be able to sell your house and to have two mortgages. By the way, there are a number of people in that situation right now. Why? Because they didn't put that contingency into the property. By the way, if it's contingent on selling your house, there's normally going to be a limitation. You got to sell your house in 90 days. Well, what happens at the end of 90 days? Well, then your whole deal is off. It's completely done. Okay? Also, the last one, which again is now common in most of the places, the purchase is contingent on a radar, chemical, and mold tests. Okay, I'm sure everybody's heard of radon. There's, it's a poison, odorless, can't think of the word, colorless gas that fills up a house. By the way, it's very simple to fix it. You just have to put windows in and allow the gas to escape. But in some of the older homes, that's not so possible. In fact, as I stated, from the Chicago area, in the Chicago area, the basements were poured concrete, and so you had very little chance of radon unless it was going to come through something else. But in other parts of the country, they use brick and block or block, and so there are potential problems there. Also, purchase is contingent, and this is important, on anything you want. Anything. You see, you can say, I gave you the 5 most important things, okay? But you can say anything you want. You can say it's contingent upon the fact that the washer and dryer stay, that the, that the stove stays, that the chandelier stays. And by the way, there's a special word, it's not in the materials, I apologize. It's called convey, C-O-N-V-E-Y. It's convey. And what conveys with the house is what's included. Now, it's really interesting. In the Midwest, where I was originally from, if you bought a house, the appliances automatically conveyed. It was just assumed they were conveying, okay? Every house my father had ever bought, every rental property, whatever, all the appliances conveyed, okay? The amazing thing was, when I moved to the East Coast, okay, I went to buy my first house, and again, the ignorance, we bought the house and we went to move in and there was no appliances. It was terrible. We had to eat pizza for like 4 days, okay? And plus, that's an expense that you have to incur. I mean, it's not buying appliances is not cheap anymore. So the point was, you can ask for something to convey. anything that's attached to the walls is supposed to convey. Okay? Anything attached to the walls. Chandeliers should convey. But be careful because there are some people who put notes on the chandelier and say does not convey. If it says does not convey, that means they're taking it with it when they leave. And I actually had some friends buy a property where they really loved the chandelier, and they came back and the chandelier was gone. And after 3 months of hassling, they just decided it's not worth it. Keep the chandelier. We don't care. But again, the contingencies. I only listed 5. You could say anything you want. Anything. Now, the problem is it can't be open-ended to the point where, like you can't void a deal. Like you can't put, it's contingent upon the house not leaking for 6 months after we buy it. You can't do that. Okay? But anything that you want, you can put. By the way, if there's damage, you could say contingent upon you repairing that damage. So again, the contingencies. The more you have, the madder your real estate agent will be. And your real estate agent, from the moment you bring up this word contingencies, they're going to say, oh, no. Oh, if you do that, the whole deal's going to cancel. Oh, don't, no, you can't do that. Oh, that's not going to work. Oh. All right? Because again, it's not, how can I say this? I'm not judging them. There's no, I'm just factually stating they don't get paid unless the transaction occurs. And it's not and they think, what they think is they think you're nitpicking and that's really stupid and whatever. Okay, listen to me carefully. Nitpick. Do whatever you want because you are the buyer. Remember, you're the person that's putting out all the money. Right? That standard joke, it's the gold standard. Him that's got the gold sets the standard. Him that's paying the money sets the contingencies. And so make sure that you do that. Okay? And you know what? You're going to forget something. There's no question about that. But again, you just have to do the best you can to make this whole thing work. Okay? Again, contingencies are normally frowned upon by real estate agents because they know it's going to delay the sale. And also, you could walk away. I mean, there are times when you say, well, the chandelier has to stay. And the sellers say, no, I'm taking the chandelier. Okay? Then what you have to say is, okay, well, then the price has to come down X thousands of dollars because I want to buy a similar chandelier. And they might say, no, that's not true. That we put that chandelier in. That's not part of the house, blah, blah. And you can get in an argument about whether something should convey or not convey. And you could end up like losing the whole deal. It was really funny because when I bought my first house, this is amazing. I actually went to buy the house, and the person was a graduate from a college that I really liked, and being from the Midwest. And we talked for a little while, and everything was very friendly. And then when we finally got to the settlement, I had agreed to pay his mortgage because we had to wait for a couple of, he wanted to stay in there for a month or so or something to that effect. And he said, oh, no, I want you to pay your mortgage. And I was like, well, that's not going to happen. Okay, and the whole thing almost exploded because, by the way, we're talking about $200 on a $70,000 house. Okay, and the whole deal almost exploded because of that one argument, one thing. And so again, that's why real estate agents don't like contingencies, but you have to do that. By the way, if you get to the point where the deal, you can't make a deal, then you just need to walk away. That's the most important thing. The problem is when people start investing time in buying a house and they keep going and going and going and going and they've seen it 4 or 5 times and they've made offers and there's been counter offers and everything, it's almost like they feel they have to buy it. Have you ever been to an auction? Have you ever been to an auction? It's like crazy. Yeah, I saw this happen one time. I'll never forget it. And the reason is it was me. I went to this auction and all I wanted to do was buy an ironing board. Okay? That's all I wanted to do was buy an ironing board. And it was an estate sale. My wife and I were there. We were both very young. And as they got to the ironing board, I figured I'd get it for $2. And I could buy a brand new one for $8. Okay? And unfortunately, they took this ironing board and they put together 4 boxes of stuff. And they said, okay, who make a bid? And I said, $1. And this guy next to me said, 2. And I said, 3. And he goes, 4. And I said, 5. And he goes, 10. I go, 15. And he goes, 20. I go, 25. At this point, my wife comes over and says, what are you doing? You You see, I got so caught up in bidding against this other fool that I totally forgot that all I wanted was the ironing board for $2. Be careful that doesn't happen to you when you're buying the house. You have to be able to walk away from a bad deal. By the way, I immediately shut up, and he went to 30. And I just thank God he went to 30, because to be perfectly honest, I don't think I had $25 with me that day. All right, so now, but here's the funny part, okay? Or here's the part that I want you to understand. When he came, he saw me afterwards. The same guy saw me afterwards, and he goes, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" I said, "What?" And he goes, "What in the heck were you bidding on?" And I said, "The ironing board." And he goes, "The ironing board?" He said, "You could have had the ironing board for 15 cents. And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, in fact," he said, "You see this cup?" He said, "This cup, if you look down here, it was made in Salt Lake City, Utah in 1843. This cup is worth almost $3,000. Said, I would have been willing to go all the way up to $1,500 in my bidding." You talk about feeling like a fool. I said, "Holy moly." And he goes, "Yes, but listen, I only wanted the cup. Please take the ironing board, even though you cost me like $25. He said, "And not only that," he said, "you can have all the other boxes." He said, "There's nothing else in there that I wanted. I just wanted that one cup." Notice that he knew what he was doing and I did not. And that's what this presentation is all about, so that you know what you're doing and you're able to look at these things and these contingencies and go forward. And by the way, there has to be places where you can do research on this. I bet you the HUD would talk about contingencies and things of that nature. All right. We're also talking about deposit and hand money. I hope to talk about that in a future session. Listen carefully. If you don't have any contingencies, let's say you don't have any contingencies, and you put forward an offer and there's no contingencies, and you sign and they sign, it's a done deal. There's nothing you can do to stop it. You signed it and it's done. And remember, real estate's unique, so there's nobody can help you out. I mentioned the HUD website earlier, and right now I want to talk about, and these are actually from the glossary. And I hate to say this. As a kid growing up in school, I always hated glossaries. Okay? As an adult, I love glossaries, because when I come across a word that I don't know what it means, I go and look it up. Listen carefully. And because a glossary is specific to that book or that area. Okay? This is very important. You need to look at the glossary. You have to look at the glossary of the HUD website. You need to read every word and you need to understand every word. Why? Because they directly impact your knowledge when you're going to do this closing. I've pulled aside a couple of the more important ones just for your information. The first one, and they're in alphabetical order theoretically. The first one's the adjustable rate mortgage, which is an ARM. Okay, what happens to this is adjustable rate mortgage is exactly what it says. It's a mortgage where the rates start out low and they go high. So over a period of time, your initial payments are lower, but they can go up. Now, it's adjustable and it's based upon something, and we'll talk about that in a later session. But the point is that the problem with the adjustable rate mortgage is that you might be able to afford it in the beginning, but not in the end. Okay? And most adjustable rate mortgages are used by banks for people who don't make enough money. Have you heard about all the housing crisis and all the mortgages that have exploded? And remember back in 2010 when the housing market imploded and everything? I'm estimating, I don't really know, but I'm going to guess that 90% of those mortgages were ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages. And what happened was the people got the mortgage at a lower interest rate, and when the rate went up, they couldn't afford the payments. And then the rate went up, and they more couldn't afford the payments. And then 3 years later, they're being foreclosed upon. So that's the key to that. By the way, the adjustable rate mortgages, just to put a little more fix to it, all of the risk, all of the market risk goes on you. In other words, when a bank takes a flat rate mortgage, for example, right now, a fixed rate mortgage, I believe is like 3.5%, 4%. Okay? Do you think those rates will stay there very long? Can't imagine. These are the lowest rates we've seen in 20 years. Okay, so what's going to happen? Well, in 2 years, the rate's going to go to 5%. Do you realize the bank loses money because it lent us the money at 4% and now they could have gotten 5%? And then it goes to 5.5%, and then it goes to 6%. Okay? And if the economy crashes for whatever reason, they could go to 13% like it was in the 80s. The point is, the bank loses money then. Do you follow? The bank loses money. Why? Because they gave me that 4% rate the whole time. So when they do an adjustable rate mortgage, all the market risk falls upon the borrower, not the lender. So banks love the adjustable rate mortgage. They make money hand over fist on the adjustable rate mortgages. Okay? By the way, because the risk is on you, it's easier to qualify for an adjustable rate mortgage. You might go to apply for a fixed mortgage, and they say, we're sorry, you don't qualify. Your debt ratio is too high. Well, what will happen is, if you say, well, how about adjustable? You're in. Here, sign the papers. We'll give you the money. Why? Because, again, you were accepting all the risk. And they figure they can foreclose on the property and get their money out anyway. The next one's a balloon mortgage. I only mention this for the real estate investment people. Almost no one does this for a home unless you're in California or someplace where the interest rates are extremely high and the value of the property rises rapidly, okay? In fact, there's some banks out in California, I heard, that were actually lending 150% of the appraised value. So if you appraised the house at $200,000, they would give you a $300,000 mortgage. Why? Because they had the confidence that that house would be worth $300,000 by the time they had to foreclose. I mean, I know that sounds stupid, but that's the logic. That was the logic behind it. Okay. So normally balloon mortgages, listen carefully, balloon mortgages are amortized over a 30-year period so that your payment is the same in a balloon mortgage as it is in a fixed rate mortgage. But there's a catch, and the catch is that after 5, 7, or 10 years, okay, the mortgage ends and you have to pay all of the remaining payment, the balloon, at the end of the term. Now, why would anybody do that? Well, back in the 1980s when the interest rate was 13%, a lot of people were taking balloon mortgages. They were doing it because they felt that within 5, 7, 10 years, the rates would drop and they could balloon it at a lower rate. Everybody with me in this? So it was interesting, and it was very thoughtful of the people to try to figure this out. And it's thoughtful and very profitable for the banks because, by the way, be aware of this. When you have a balloon payment, okay, you have to give all the money back. Okay, how do you normally do that? You get a second mortgage, another mortgage for the same property. And guess what? All the closing costs are there again. So the bank makes 3 to 6% because most of the closing costs go to the bank, let's be honest. A lot of it is for that, okay? Okay, the next one is closing. That's the settlement. That's when you go down, you close, you sign the papers. This is the official settlement. That's where all the checks and the money exchanges hands, all right? And also you get the title. And sometimes you don't get the title because the titles have to be registered with the local and all that stuff and it goes through, but the closing costs, okay, these are the costs that they do vary. I mentioned 3 to 6%. It varies upon the geographic localities. Like I said, transfer taxes in some states are 2%. In some states, it's only 1%. In other states, it's like 4%. Like you get into some of the higher income states, which again, I don't want to mention. But the fact is that the closing costs do matter. Also, the attorney's fees are normally there, so the attorney's fees are going to be different depending on who you hire. There's also sometimes requirements for different things that you have to do. Okay, the next word is covenant. A covenant is a promise that's attached to them from a previous owner. The best example I can give from around here is in western Pennsylvania, we have people that have gas wells out on their property, and there's a covenant or an easement that the gas company is allowed to drive on their property and build a road. So they actually have like a gravel road leading from the main road to the gas well. Okay, that's an easement or a covenant. Now, when I buy that house, okay, and by the way, whether you buy the gas rights or not could become a contingency, but that's another issue. The point is that when I buy that house, that covenant is attached to that property, and I have to abide by that rule also. So you want to know what the covenants are. There was actually one place where somebody bought a house, And thank God they looked. It turned out there was a covenant that there was a well above their house. And this was in a suburb. This was in a suburb. They said there was a well above their house. They didn't even know about it. It was up in a little forest, so to speak, and it was surrounded by a shed. They covered it on purpose. But there was an easement and covenant that the gas company could go up there if they had to make repairs and maintenance. Okay? Well, listen to me. There was no road there. So what they were saying was that the gas company had the right to come in and put a road, again, it would only be gravel, but a gravel road up to that thing to be able to fix it. But could anybody imagine what it would be like bringing in 2 cranes and a Caterpillar and a backhoe and a whole bunch of stuff up into your backyard? I mean, everything would be destroyed. Again, oh, and by the way, I'm sure they'd make it back almost as pretty as it was before. But you get my drift. The point is you need to know what the covenants are. The earnest money, hand money, deposit, is the money you put down for the house to show that you really want the house. Listen carefully. You want the earnest money to be 0. But, you can never get away with that, but you want it to be 0. So you just say, okay, I'll give $100. See, what the real estate agents will tell you is, oh no, it needs to be like $5,000. It doesn't need to be anything. Remember, you're the boss. You're throwing the pitch. So you just say, no, I mean, by the way, let's be reasonable. If you're buying a $100,000 house, $1,000 for hand money is reasonable. 1%, you know. But again, be careful. Here's the most important reason. If you put that $1,000 hand money down, okay, and everybody's working on the deal, and at the last minute you pull out for whatever reason, the $1,000 is considered money that you're going to give the seller to make up for the fact that you pulled out of the deal. That's why I always recommend that it's as low as you possibly can make it. Again, read the HUD website. It has explanations. The fixed rate mortgage, we already talked about. It's just a fixed rate, 30 years, 15 years, 25 years, whatever. Mortgage insurance. Now, this is very important. Mortgage insurance. Mortgage insurance is, ready? You're going to love this, because this is one of those things that always drives me crazy. You have to pay, you have to pay for the mortgage insurance for the bank, so the bank can sell your mortgage out on the market. It's pretty sweet, isn't it? Isn't that a sweet deal? So you have to pay the mortgage insurance, okay? Now, what does that mean? That just means that it's insured so that if you don't pay the mortgage, okay, that somebody else will be able to do it, okay? Now, we have some more terms, and we'll finish these up in the next show.